So I've been wanting to make a dollhouse for my Barbie dolls for years, but between the time it takes and the fact that it'd be massive, I kind of made peace with the fact that a Barbie-sized dollhouse isn't happening anytime soon, but I figured why not turn the concept into one of my tiny dollhouses instead. Does that make sense? Probably not, but if you've been here a while, you know I rarely make sense anyway. And if you're new, well, welcome. I'm Stella, and yes, I'm completely dollhouse obsessed. I also post miniature DIY projects, and they all come with a free printable template, so you can make your own tiny craft. Alright, I know, I've babbled enough. Let's just jump into today's project, shall we? We'll start by cutting this part 3 or 4 times, and we'll stack all the layers together until we have a piece that's about 2mm thick. And as usual, I suggest using cardstock from old packaging for this, since it's quite thick but very easy to cut. You can use a cutting machine if you have one, or just regular scissors and a craft knife. Plus it's virtually free, and we like that, don't we? Next, we'll cut this part twice and we'll attach the 2 layers on top of the piece we've just assembled. The final panel should measure 3mm in thickness. To make the second wall, we'll have to cut this part a few times and we'll glue all the layers together until we reach a thickness of about 3mm. Then we'll cut this part twice and we'll glue all the pieces to this edge of the panel we've just assembled, like this. We'll repeat the same process for this part, so we'll cut and stack together multiple layers until we have a panel that's 3mm thick. Then we'll cover its edge with this part, cut twice. Next up, we'll need a few tiny magnets like these, and we'll glue them into all these small round slots in the 3 walls. And I always recommend these magnets since they're pretty inexpensive but super handy. Like here, they let us snap the walls together easily. And I'll have them linked in the description if you want to get them. However, if you can't, poster putty or double-sided tape are good alternatives. Next, we'll have to cut this part several times, and again we'll have to stack all the layers until we have a final panel that's 3mm thick. We'll do the same for all these parts, and here's a little trick. If you have a cutting machine with a heavy-duty blade like a Cricut or a Silhouette, or even better, one with a laser module like my M1 Ultra, you can stack a few layers of cardstock first and cut them all at once. This is totally optional, but it makes things way faster. And speaking of cutting machines, if you have one, you can find a digital template for this project in my shop, and I'll drop a link in the description for you. Next, we'll cut this part a few times and we'll stack all the layers in 2 groups, each roughly 2mm thick. We'll repeat the same step for this part. And at this point, we should have all these little panels ready. I know, there are quite a lot of them. We'll have to coat them all with a thick layer of acrylic gesso, and I recommend applying it with a sponge to get that plaster-like texture. And something I like to do at this stage is placing all the panels between 2 layers of parchment paper and then under something heavy like a big book for a few hours. This will flatten the cardstock, and the parchment paper will absorb any leftover moisture in the paint, preventing the panels from bending over time. Next, we'll cut this part twice, and this time I suggest using a lightweight type of cardstock since it's thinner and easier to cut. I used a piece that was already black, but if you don't have any, you can just use any other color and go over it with a marker. We'll glue 2 frames onto this part, cut from clear plastic, and of course this also comes from old packaging. We'll fit the resulting little window into this wall. Then we'll repeat the exact same process to make all these windows and doors, which we'll then glue into their respective wall openings. Next, we'll cut this part twice and we'll glue the 2 sides together. We'll sandwich the resulting piece in between these 2 frames. And then we'll paint the finished piece with brown acrylic. We'll repeat these steps to make a second door, and we'll glue them into the openings in these 2 walls. Now that the walls are ready, we can assemble them in this order. With the base structure ready, we can begin adding some details. First, we'll paint the lower half of these two walls black. Then, to create a brick texture, I cut this little stencil out of some plastic packaging, and I used my laser cutter, but any good blade cutting machine should work as long as the plastic isn't too thick. I used the stencil along with some spackling paste to create a three-dimensional brick effect. Then I gave it a coat of beige acrylic. And finally I dabbed down some red, orange and brown to get that exposed red brick look. And if you're using my free printable template, cutting this part by hand can be a bit tricky, so I've also added a printable brick pattern instead. It's not quite as three-dimensional, but it's way quicker. And if you went a little overboard with the brick painting and got red paint where it should have stayed white, just cover it with more white paint and voila, problem solved. Not that I've known from experience, mind you. At this point, if you want, you can add a few extra details like door handles and wall trims. Next, we'll have to cut this part 3 or 4 times, and again we'll have to glue all the layers together. We'll paint the resulting panel black, and it doesn't really have to be perfect since we'll cover most of its surface with this part. And if you want, you can coat the bathroom tiles with nail polish to make them look all shiny and three-dimensional. We'll glue the floor to the dollhouse walls this way. And now we can start working on the roof. First, we'll cut this part and we'll glue the sides together. Now, the next step is totally optional, but I glued the panel to a magnetic sheet. I had some left over that I rarely use since it's not super strong, but I figured here gravity does most of the work, so the magnet just keeps the roof panels from sliding sideways. I'll link these magnets in the description, but if you can't get them, you can use the round ones from earlier or just double-sided tape or poster putty. We'll make the other roof panels the same way. And finally, we'll paint them all black. Next, we'll cut this part twice and we'll glue the sides together. We'll do the same for this part. And then we'll combine the two elements together. We'll paint the resulting piece black. Then we'll grab 3 craft picks or toothpicks and we'll trim them at a length of roughly 3 centimeters. We'll paint them black. And then we'll glue them to the patio floor this way. Lastly, we'll attach the pergola roof to both the wall and the columns. And our teeny tiny dollhouse is ready, though now that I see it finished, I'm not so sure about that big, plain central roof panel. I'm thinking maybe a skylight, kind of like this one, would look better. What do you think? Also, should I make mini replicas with patio furniture and everything else so far? Why am I always so undecided? Anyway, as promised, here's the link to the free printable template, and if you want to make more tiny dollhouses like this one, you should definitely check out this playlist. And this is all for today's video. Until next time, bye!